Our program today, as you know, is the state of the city. Let me give you a brief introduction of our two speakers. First off will be Interim City Manager Michael Dane. Michael was named the Interim City Manager in February of this year, but he's been employed by the city since 1998 in his position as Director of Finance. And we have all seen him and watched him function in that capacity. So we're very grateful for his participation. We'll be joined here soon by our mayor, Alvin. He was elected to office in November 3rd of 2009 after a long history in private business and public service. Mayor New and his wife Patricia have two daughters, and he's very active, and I know that each of you probably encountered him in some good situation here throughout the city. He's done a good job. We're certainly proud of him. Before I cue up the podium for Michael, in keeping with our theme, We Can Do That, I thought I would throw out 5 things, among others, that you can do to help the city and to strengthen the relationship between the business community and the city of San Angelo. Here goes. You're free to take notes. Number 1, enjoy yourself. Despite the drought and other things that you hear, we're very fortunate to have vast and well-maintained and unique recreational facilities. So go out, enjoy a park, enjoy many of the sporting events that are done on facilities provided by the sports venues that are provided by the city, recreation facilities. You may have heard we have a newly refurbished municipal swimming pool that we're very proud of. Number 2, spend some money. Let's get through the tax-free weekends, and after they're over, let's keep spending that money. We've been very fortunate to have a rising sales tax base, and so we need to keep that up. As that rises, all of our boats continue to rise as well. Buy local and buy frequently. Number 3, engage. The mayor and I were at a meeting this morning. He looked out and he said, you know, I see a lot of gray hair. And he said, we need for people not only of our age and our generation to remain engaged, but we need to encourage those who are in the sub-40 crowd to take their part. And there are a number of opportunities in which you can contribute. Anything from volunteers for the nonprofits around here. There are also boards and commissions that are sponsored by the city to engage and direct the city affairs and help the folks that work here, either as elected officials or as staff, to do their function. It's important that we get our hands on and contribute to the process. So be engaged. Number 2, support. Now, feedback is good if it's good feedback. But what we need in our city government with regard to both the elected officials and the paid staff members is good, positive feedback and support. Until you have a law partner that decides to run for office and his billable hours go in the tank, you don't realize what a tremendous service it is for folks on any elected local position to take that position. So you need to thank those folks, and you need to understand how hard they're working, and you need to support that in a good way. And I think all of us do this. I may be preaching to the choir, but I think it's certainly a valid point. The staff who's made this their career also deserve your support as well. They may get paid for it, but some of the things they have to put up with, nobody gets paid enough to do that sort of thing. So support, a pat on the back and a good word there and now. You know what number 1 is? Conserve. Conserve. We are facing a real setback as far as our water resources are, but these folks you're going to hear from have taken steps decades ago to do the best we can to get through this, and we will get through this. So here's my point. When the lakes fill up and when the hickory water begins to run, remember this time and conserve those resources, not only for yourself, but for our fellow man and for this environment that we've been blessed with here in West Texas. So that's some things that you can do to help the relationship between the San Angelo business and the city of San Angelo. Think about it. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce Michael Dane, our interim city manager.
Thank you, Brian. Well, thank you for having me here today. This really is probably the most interesting part of the presentation right here, and that is while the mayor's not here, we can all tell the mayor jokes we can't tell in his presence. and they're often the best ones. So really, we've got too much. If we cover everything the city does, we've got too much to talk about today. We want to be accountable or give you updates in certain areas. Certainly we'll end up at water, but there are some key areas we think it's important to stay accountable on, and we're going to hit those areas today. Of course, we're available other times to talk about specific issues if you have questions or concerns in specific areas. We want to be accountable for ballot approved sales tax projects. What are we doing with things that were voted in? We're hopefully going to conclude a budget season here very soon. We want to kind of give you the highlights of that. Streets are certainly an issue, continue to be an issue, and we want to make progress on that, so we'll talk about that and then end up with water. Sales tax projects. Producers Park, half-cent sales tax funded project, began in summer 2010. It's up and running now. Meadow Creek Park is renovation, relatively small project, approximately $250,000. Love Municipal Pool, we're trying to maximize revenues at the city and selling some naming rights, and this is certainly a good example where we were able to capitalize on that. Of course, we had an excellent brand new product that's very popular right now to sell. Approximately $3.3 million to renovate that pool. It's very popular. It's making a small profit at this point, and council has directed that small profit be set aside for improvements and maintenance issues. So a success story there. Rio Vista Park renovation has started. Estimated cost $814,000. River improvements, that's lots of activity going on there, approximately $9.3 million. We just got authorization to stabilize banks a little farther upstream, taking advantage of some good bids that we had associated with that. And so kind of a little bit of a project extension both for aesthetic issues and for water quality issues. Red Arroyo Trail, this project is 80% funded by a federal grant. The other 20% is local money. This project's kind of a milestone. A few years back when we started talking about this, we went in up front with the objective that we not increase the maintenance costs associated with this land. And just a few days ago, the latest update we had was that actually, upon completion of this project, it will cost less to maintain the post-project land. It'll cost less to maintain that land than it does now before the project. And so we're excited about that. To begin thinking about maintenance costs, post-project costs, way early in the project, we think is going to yield benefits, but that takes vigilance. It's a constant effort. Other half-cent sales tax projects, airport terminal rehab, you can see that going on. Fort Concho has got a patch of money. We're going to decide, actually you will end up deciding through committees and council representation what is the best way to utilize that money to maximize the value of Fort Concho. 29th Street Sports Complex, the cattle barn at the fairgrounds, Hickory Water Supply, and the City Auditorium. Just a brief note on City Hall, that's not a half-cent sales tax funded project, but that project reached the point where we could move back in. We're all very excited to have central heat and air. We are in and functioning and in the best environment any of the current employees have ever worked in, so thank you for that. We are working out the bugs on that, and I think we're talking about an open house kind of event early in October sometime. The budget. The core of the budget goals we had were modest employee raises, do something, move us in the right direction on street maintenance, and let's make some more progress on property tax rate reduction. In order to do those things, we had a budget gap, or we now have a budget gap of approximately $750,000. Is actually $1 million higher than that when we started. We're down to about $750,000. We propose to close that gap. We will make that final proposal at the meeting on August 21st with the council through cuts and targeted fees. Proposed cuts will be $379,000. That will be 8 full-time positions and 1 part-time positions. And targeted fees. The issue we deal with regularly, we don't always talk so publicly about it, is how do you support a service? Should it be supported by taxpayers and that cost spread across all of the taxpayers, or should a service be supported by a fee? For example, if somebody wants to build a house, should all those inspections and all that permitting process be free and supported by the tax base, or should it be supported by that person who wants to do that project? Well, the guidance we got early in the process from council was that where fees could be matched with the activities, those fees should more closely cover those costs. In other words, don't put it on the taxpayer, put it on the person who's generating the activity. And so we'll be proposing approximately $342,000 in targeted fee increases to ask people who want to do something to come closer to bearing that cost and not spread that out over the remaining taxpayers. Property tax history. Over the last 10 years, we were at a high of 86.83. What we're proposing this year is a half-cent reduction in the property tax rate. That'll get us down to 78.1. We are coming up on 9 cents. We're 8 cents and change in reduction over the last 10 years. This is the lowest the rate has been since just after the appraisal districts were created in the mid-'80s. And so I think this says we're moving in the right direction. We may not be where we want to be, but we're certainly moving in the right direction. Increased street maintenance. We have approximately $600,000 in the existing budget for seal coating on an annual basis. We contract that out, we bid it out, take the best price, and we do as much yardage or as much street coverage as possible. What we're proposing in this budget is to triple that amount. Street maintenance is critical. We'll get into that here in a minute, but maintaining streets is critical to extend the life of those streets and prevent deterioration. The number, if we continue to contract, the number that we ultimately need in there is closer to $2.5 million. If we take it in-house, some of the estimates bring that cost down as low as $2.3 million and change. It just depends on what the costs are for materials and that kind of thing. So at some point, we'll be talking about whether or not to bring that in-house, buy the equipment, and hire the employees versus contracting that out. We're not there yet. We need to get some money in the budget before we have that discussion. Anyway, we're proposing to triple that amount that we've been doing. A little more on streets. Lane miles of streets in the city, 1,150 lane miles. Major roadways, 283 lane miles. And residential streets, 867 lane miles. Different types of streets have different life cycles or life expectancies. Asphalt is nice and smooth when you build it, but it deteriorates much quicker. Concrete or roller compacted concrete is expected to last much longer, but it has a higher initial cost. So we're having those discussions about where the value is for the city. The key here is the weight-bearing portion of the street is the base that you don't see, that hopefully you don't see. You don't see unless there's a pothole. And the cap that we see, the asphalt or the concrete on the top, is simply there to protect the base. We've got to protect the base. So when you see those streets cracking, water's getting in there and causing deterioration in that base. And so failure is predictable in those cases. So the expected life cycle or the life expectancy of a street is very much dependent upon proper maintenance. Asphalt streets require much more regular maintenance. Concrete or roller compacted concrete streets require dramatically less maintenance. And roller compacted concrete is only a small amount higher than asphalt. It looks very promising. And we've got 2 projects out there that are complete, and we're watching those to see how they perform. They could be our long-term answer. Street reconstruction. Our city engineer, Clinton Bailey, has prepared a list for us of streets which would be candidates for reconstruction. Candidates, we're not certain that they all need to be reconstructed. Some may be salvageable at a lower level of service. But that totals $155 million. I won the piggy bank today, and I checked, and it was empty. And even if it was full, it wouldn't get us there. If we can use roller compacted concrete, we can get and at last, we can get the benefits of concrete with much closer to the cost of asphalt. The other benefit is not just the life in years, but the lower maintenance requirement over those years. Asphalt, there are different levels of maintenance or reconstruction. We won't go into those today, but to the extent that we can take advantage of roller compacted concrete, that would be good. One of the things we talk about is we got a lot of streets that need to be done, and we've got approximately $1.75 million built into the general fund budget every year for capital. Well, about $250,000 of that's dedicated for a fire truck, which leaves us at about $1.5 million a year for capital. If we dedicated that all to streets, we could spend $1.5 million a year for the foreseeable future for street reconstruction. Bell Street is a $9 to $10 million project from the river north to the Houston Hart Freeway is a $9 to $10 million project. So you can see that's not going to get us anywhere near where we need to be for streets. And so one of the questions that council asked was what kind of borrowing capacity exists. And so we took that $1.5 million, used it as debt service, assumed a 20-year maturity with a 4% rate of return, and we could borrow approximately $20 million in change. $20 million doesn't get us where we need to be either. But the likely outcome is that somewhere in the middle, with some borrowing to get us jump-started on projects that need to be done, and some year-to-year pay-as-you-go capacity remaining, is the likely outcome. Council has not made that decision. We have not made a recommendation. Where that ends up very much will depend on how quickly council wants to move. How much do they want to get done in a quick fashion, and how much do they feel we can just kind of pay out or pay as you go? So that's capacity to match up with needs, and the decisions have not been made yet on those. We'll probably start talking about those in September. Water supply. This slide shows us the relative lake levels for Nasworthy, Twin Buttes, and O.C. Fisher. The message here, you can see some of them are way up and down and some of them are flat. The flat one is Nasworthy, relatively constant level. The up and down are Twin Buttes and O.C. Fisher. And the key there is that we are very storm dependent. To get those levels up, we got to have a storm. And then we use that water, or it evaporates, and the waters come back down. And you can see we're way out here on the right side of the graph where everything's down. Ivy, where we get most of our water right now, a year ago had 123,000 acre feet in it. In August, it has 76,000 acre feet, a drop of approximately 50,000 acre feet. Twin Buttes had 15,000 acre feet in it a year ago, and it's down to 8,700. You can see we got a little bit of rain in the spring, early summer time frame, and that helped out. But we're back on the downward slide there. Nasworthy, during this time of year, we draw more water for use than we can get from our IV contract. So we supplement that with local supplies. That started in July, and you can see its impact on the lake level in Nasworthy. Nasworthy had kind of been on a slow downward trend, but when we start drawing that water out of there for our day-to-day usage, it drops that level much more quickly. And that, of course, everybody sees it, and that's what's got everybody's attention, which is good because we do need to conserve. These are expected volumes of water available in Ivy depending on different rainfall levels. The top one, if we get the average rainfall that we normally get, you can see that that ivy level will come up in spite of use and will yield more available water. If we get no inflow, the very bottom line, and you see about June or July of 2013, we reach a point where there won't be water available in ivy. This line represents a composite of all our water supplies and what kind of amount is available on the left with dates across the bottom. Here in October of this year, we'll probably be about at drought level 3, and you'll probably see council action to take us there. We get to June or July next year, and you'll see that the ivy supply will be depleted. Now, the key is what kind of assumptions went into this, and the assumptions are no inflows, no rain, or no rain that generates inflow. For example, we had rain the other day. If that doesn't generate inflow to ivy, then it's a net zero impact. All it does is saturate the soil so that we get runoff a little quicker if we get another rainfall event. That's why we're pushing so hard to this June, July timeframe next year is why we're pushing so hard to get Hickory up and running so that we've got another water supply at that point. What are we doing now? We're pumping out of the South Pool. The South Pool at this point is not connected to anything, so it's just sitting there. We're pumping it to the North Pool. These are the pumps. Those are the lines. Pumping it into the equalization channel to a point where it will run to the North Pool on its own. There it's running into the North Pool. That has had a positive impact for Nasworthy. The rate of decline in Nasworthy has slowed. As Twin Buttes comes up, more water flows through the gates into Nasworthy, and that rate of decline for Nasworthy has leveled out some. Will Wilde tells me it won't make Nasworthy recover. We cannot pump enough to bring Nasworthy back up to its full status. It'll take rain runoff to fill Nasworthy back up. All we can do is slow that rate of decline. Hickory project update. Wellfield, 50,000 feet of pipe to 9 wells, awarded to Price Construction, contract amount $3.8 million. That portion of the project is substantially complete. This is the way it's laid out. The well field is laid out. We'll come back to that. The transmission pipeline, the pipeline from the well field to town. 62 miles of 30-inch pipeline, $39 million project, contract completion, July of 2013. They're pushing. They'd like to get it done sooner than that, and I think the rest of us would like that too. Here's some pictures of the pipeline insulation. The pipe is steel pipe that's lined on the inside surface and the outside surface with a concrete type material, and then they double bag it. They put a double thickness of some kind of plastic liner around it to try to isolate it from the soil. They started in the middle of the pipeline. They're moving opposite directions. 4.5 miles have been completed toward the well field, 7 miles completed toward town. They are behind schedule. They started in a very rocky place and the rock was harder than they anticipated, and so the contractor was using equipment that wasn't heavy enough to create the trench, and they've gotten through that now, and they're making progress and on their way to catching up with their timetable. The wellfield booster pump station. Recall at each well, there'll be pipes that collect and pipe that to a central location where there will be one big booster pump to put that water into that big pipeline. It'll take the 9 existing wells. A pump station will be capable of 6 million gallons per day. There'll be 2 tanks, one at that location and then one at the divide, this side of Eden, where there'll be big tanks to accommodate different flow rates. And then it'll be controlled by a microwave telemetry system. Wellfield booster station contract, just under $13 million, scheduled to be finished in June. In time, hopefully, to pump some water. Treatment plant. Council selected the treatment method in June. As of August, they're 20% through the design. They'll expect to advertise for bids in April, notice to proceed in June, and substantially complete in August of 14. Note the year difference there. There's a year delay between when we expect to be able to transport the water versus when we're able to treat the water. If we are in a situation where we need to use that water before we have the treatment plant going, we'll need to work on exceptions to treatment regulations. And we'll need to blend that water if we've got other sources to blend it with. But we'll have to work those, we're working those issues out as we speak. What are we doing beyond these things to expand that capacity? What if it doesn't rain and we bring Hickory up and we still need more water? Well, we've got more capacity available in the Hickory Aquifer project. We just need to drill more wells and resize the booster pump station. The pipeline is built to handle full capacity. That phase, I think, was initially planned for 10 to 15 years down the road. Because they've had success in the bid amounts, they've come in lower. They have approximately $15 million in capacity in those bonds that have not been contracted for. They're going to try to. We are going to take a proposal to council on the 21st to discuss with them expanding the well field and taking the project to its full capacity, or as near full capacity as we can get, as much as we can get with that extra $15 million. And so that's one of the things that we are considering, to provide additional water sooner rather than waiting for that 10 to 15 year time frame to occur. This graph just shows what kind of water is available out of that well field. You can see that we're banking water now. The purple line goes up. If we begin using all we can, that line steeply comes back down to a much lower level. If we, the red and green lines are the ones that are important. You can see as we get farther out, the green line shows much more capacity available, and we would be, what we're proposing now is to develop to that capacity now in case we need it before we had originally planned for it. Cost estimate to do that expansion, approximately $16 million. What is the future water for San Angelo? Hickory water supply, not just the current phase, but that additional phase that we just talked about. Tri-City Water, we are working with, having discussions with Abilene and Midland for longer term water supply, a longer time horizon, 50 to 100 years. We are fortunate that somebody 40 years ago began thinking about this water supply. We need to be doing that favor to our grandchildren so that 40 years from now they are similarly prepared. Reuse of water. We've already started looking into what it would take to reuse water, to treat water either for gray water purposes or to reuse in our water supply system. That is probably the future for most municipalities in the U.S., in my opinion. We simply are being pushed there by our environment to consider it soon. There are other options that we're working on, talking about, that we cannot or are not ready to discuss publicly. But if there was a lot of water, a lot of cheap water, we'd be jumping up and down about it. Keys for the future for the city. One of the things that we have seen in the past when our organization wasn't getting along with another organization, we saw a lot of time wasted. I think it's critical that our staff and our elected officials work hard to get along with other organizations. I'll give you an example right now. The relationship between the city and the chamber is about as good as it's ever been, I think. And so we think that makes us as productive as we can be in that situation. And so we encourage you to help us with that. Water supply development. We need to continue on this, especially in West Texas. Water availability is not just a quality of life issue, it's an economic development issue. And so we need to stay on top of that and do the best we can reasonably for water supply. And then I'm getting kind of on a soapbox here, but I think we need to be aware of intergovernmental fiscal issues. And I suppose that's kind of a veiled way of saying we shouldn't be relying too heavily on the state or the federal government for our day-to-day operations. I think we can see that they've got some significant challenges in their future, and I don't think we want to rely on them. I think that the West Texas independent spirit will serve us well in that regard. We don't want to rely on the state or the federal government for our day-to-day operational needs. We want to continue to move in an independent fashion so that we are not reliant on those which may not have an ability to fulfill their promises. And Alvin's here so we can tell the nice mayor jokes now, and I think he may have something to say and may want to open it for questions.
Looking at the time, I thought that was a little drier than my normal speech and a little more dependent on the PowerPoint, but also very informative, and I'd like to point out just as long-winded as I am. So from there, I really think what we ought to do is take your questions. There are some things that I would put a little color on, but I really feel like that was very informative, gave you a lot of breadth of information, and so if I can help you with answering some questions, that's probably the way to clarify things and move forward. What did you see that makes you want to ask a follow-up question?
Alvin, have we formalized the date for the water forum?
Okay. So let's see if they've got it put together. But we are starting to move forward because we'll be making votes on budget, and we will be making votes on some water issues. And then the West Texas Legislative Summit will be in session the latter part of this month, the 28th or something like that. And so we'll be able to attend that, and then we're anticipating a presentation or a forum to continue to educate and talk with citizens about water and where we're headed, and the fact that we're very likely entering stage 3 of the drought plan soon, and to continue to educate and communicate with the citizenry and answer questions on August 30th if that comes together. And if it does, you'll see that being promoted, and if it doesn't, then the date will be very soon thereafter, and we will be going down that path. Okay. The reclamation of water is one thing that I think is definitely in our future, and what is maybe difficult for everyone to know, and maybe you do know and maybe you don't, but currently we're under an agreement with the farmers and the canal system to use the water out of the wastewater station to irrigate east of town. And the reason that makes sense is because it's a trade of fresh water for wastewater. So they have rights under the agreement from the 1950s related to the Twin Buttes Dam to get fresh water out of Twin Buttes and Lake Nasworthy to use in that canal system. That's how we got that dam in the first place. The BLM built the dam as an irrigation tool. And so we have obligations to them on fresh water. We made some changes, or the city made changes roughly 10 years ago to use water out of the wastewater treatment facility instead. Now, at some point, we will, under this type of scenario, have to reclaim that water and do something with it so that we can look at treating it with RO and blending it with the water from the Hickory Aquifer supply to meet our needs. And that may be what's going on, where currently we're able to live with the wastewater going out into the canal, which is kind of good for both of us, them and us. We're not giving them fresh water, and they're able to irrigate crops. But that's one of the things that's imminent and in front of us that we need to deal with. Okay, see, he did a terrific job. Thank y'all very much.